You may know him from co-starring in and co-producing the film Bros, his stand-up acts, or writing for programs like The Mindy Project and Punk'd. Comedian, actor, writer, and producer Guy Branum is with us today, and he's here to dish all about inclusivity of the plus-size and LGBTQ plus communities on TV, from behind the camera to in front of it. This is Advocate Now. Welcome, Guy. It's so great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, in your memoir, My Life as a Goddess, you dispel anti-fat bias and problematic representations of the LGBTQ and plus communities in media. What are some stereotypes that you're trying to change, and why?
You know, when it comes to representation of fat people in media, I think, so frequently we appear only to be the butt of a joke or to be an impediment to someone's story. I think it's important to have characters who are well-rounded, who have agency, who have, happiness, who aren't just locuses of sadness. So frequently for queer people, straight people understand our importance when we are being sad and tragic and getting beaten up and tied to fences. And all of those things happen, but they are not the fullness of our identity. And I think straight people, cis people will not be able to fully see us as real until they can understand our stories as they relate to us and not as we are figures in their stories. And I think when it comes to fat people, it's the same thing. You have to start seeing us as human, people who have joy and complexity, who are, have intelligence.
Now, your movie Bros, it broke barriers on being the first gay rom-com from a major studio. How did it represent gay and LGBTQ plus culture in a positive way?
It didn't try to make it seem important. It was a fun comedy. It is a fun comedy. And I think it did a really good job of reminding everybody of all of the people who had to work really hard to get us to a place where we could have a silly comedy. It reminded us of all of the queer stories that haven't been told, while at the same time just trying to tell a very fun, specific story, that's very much rooted in who Billy Eichner is as a character and a performer. The burden of importance is something we have to be able to get past, and it's not something we're going to be able to get past until we have more representation of queer people. As it is right now, queer stories primarily exist for straight people to win Academy Awards. Eric McCormack, a straight guy playing Will on Will and Grace, was helpful for getting us, the legal rights that we have, but those are transitions. We need to move to a point where we can be part of telling our own stories.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, representation matters. So why was it important for the cast from Bros to be primarily from the LGBTQ plus community in real life?
I mean, like every role in Bros, except for a couple of celebrity cameos, are played by LGBTQ plus people. So that means all of the cis roles, all of the straight roles, all being played by gay people. And as people who have been systematically excluded from these systems, who haven't gotten the same opportunities, for a really long time, if you came out of the closet, it fundamentally changed the kind of work you could get. Luke McFarlane, the romantic interest in Bros is such a great example of that. He came out in 2008 when nobody was coming out of the closet. Not nobody, but, that was back when Perez Hilton was still having to out people. And he ended up pretty much, this astoundingly handsome, astoundingly talented actor, pretty much only worked in Hallmark films since then. And, it's great work, which he loves and really respects and is really proud of. And all of that is great. But we have not received the same opportunities. And some people are now like, well, what? You're saying only gay people can play gay roles? And does that mean only straight people can play straight roles? Not at all. There have been many, many good, great performances by straight actors as gay characters. I can't speak to the question of trans or cis, but it has been the rule forever. We have been giving them Academy Awards left and right for doing that. And there is a way that we have to ask ourselves, why is a cis person always the best person to play a trans role? Why is a straight person always the best person to play a role? And so frequently it comes down to they're famous. They're someone we know and already like because they've gotten lots of opportunities, because we considered them to be interchangeable. And when we talk about actors being chameleons who can play any role, we insist on applying that power of interchangeability to white, straight, cis men usually. And we have to break open our minds and, when we're telling stories about a group of people who are traditionally underrepresented, those people need to be involved in the storytelling process in one way or another. One of the great things in Bros is just, the movie was written by Billy, who is a cis gay guy, and Nick Stoller, who is a cis straight guy. And having an all-queer cast meant that members of the cast who were trans or non-binary felt more comfortable, like, contributing their own jokes that neither Nick nor Billy nor I was a co-producer on the movie, would have written for them. Eve Lindley was tossing off stuff that was, edgy and fun and great. And it was because we had an environment that was supportive and where we were all family.
How far do you think we still have to go in terms of positive, non-stereotypical representation of the LGBTQ plus community in films?
I think it is just a question of volume. We need more stuff. And in the last 15 years, we've had more queer people showing up in stories that still center around like straight cis characters. And I think the more stories we get that are authentically queer, the more our representation will become more complex. And a lot of people are scared of fatness, scared of fat people, uncomfortable with fatness, and would like to pretend we don't exist. And, I think for us to change that, we need to represent different kinds of fat people on screen. As long as trans people were only being represented in really abjected, pathetic, unfortunate ways, it was very easy for people who didn't deal with trans people in their lives to see them that way. The ridiculous thing is that there are a great number of fat people in our world who we deal with, but we somehow have just become comfortable with, television and movies that are sanitized of them. And it allows us to think of the fat people in our own world as being not whole or not full characters, not fully human. And I think fat suits are one of the worst, progenitors of that idea, in that, we're saying for a fat person to be on camera and for them to be central to the story, it has to be half human actor, half puppet. Can you entirely sympathize with a character that is being played half by Brendan Fraser and half by foam rubber? If we were able to cast an extremely fat actor, it would change the way we looked at the character.
How are you personally planning to push the agenda of positive inclusivity of both plus size and LGBTQ representation in media, through your writing, your producing, and your acting?
Well, I think one thing is not being scared of the word fat. Plus size is an attempt to soften and distance from the word fat, and fat is the experience. Fat is the word that is applied to us. And I understand that people are trying to shift away from words that might have the echo of oppression on them, but I also understand that we need to face head on that this is a problem. So frequently, people in marginalized situations are given the offer of proximity to normalcy to feel more okay. And, so frequently people want to say like, oh, well, you're not fat like them, or you're not gay like them. And the thing is I am fat like them, and if you want to dehumanize them, you have to dehumanize me as well, and you shouldn't, because I'm great.
So what needs to happen for us to see more inclusivity on the screen? I mean, do network execs who greenlight shows need to replicate that diversity? How does it change from this point even more?
Showing them that something can be profitable is a way of moving the ball. It is, It is how things work in the system as it exists. And I also think there are more granular ways. Like, I think casting directors being able to understand that server at restaurant doesn't have to mean one thing. Server at restaurant for such a long time, get the most blandly attractive man or woman, depending on the situation. And, it doesn't cross their mind that they can cast an extremely fat person to play a role that doesn't call for extreme fatness. And most roles that call for extreme fatness are like, haha, look at that super fat guy.
Well, hopefully it is all changing, guys. Such an important conversation to have. Thank you so much for chatting with us. We really appreciate it.
I'm Sonia Baghdadi. Thanks for watching and advocating. For more stories and content like this, visit advocatechannel.com.